To my Canadian cousins in the land of my ancestors, my name is Paul David Ainsberg Auger. I've been visiting in Vancouver Island for some time now. 23 reports to police authorities, several reports to other authorities later. There is still a criminal gang running around Vancouver Island, apparently with complete freedom to target me. No action appears to have been taken against them. Why is that? I'm an auditor by trade. It's my job to ensure that organizations' processes do not have vulnerabilities which can be exploited for criminal activity. Over the course of this experience, I've discovered the weaknesses in Canada's systems that are allowing this to happen. They are massive and massively dangerous. Anytime you have someone giving detailed, credible reports of crimes that occur, including descriptions of the perpetrators, their addresses, in many cases, and lists of witnesses who have directly observed these events, and nothing happens, you have a broken system. I'm here to tell you about it. And because I am an auditor, I also have suggestions on how these weaknesses can be remedied for the safety and security of all. In this case, at least one criminal organization is exploiting this weakness to commit a veritable crime wave here on Vancouver Island. And from my direct observation, it appears that at least one foreign intelligence service may be joining in as well. I am currently both a direct witness and a plaintiff against this group of criminals. They started as a small gang of stalkers and hackers targeting me when I arrived for vacation. But as I kept reporting the crimes, they discovered these weaknesses in Canada's systems were actually keeping the police from investigating them. So every time my reports were not acted on, they expanded and escalated their operations to see what else they could get away with. And to date, nothing has stopped them. At this time, they have the power of a full criminal organization they can use against any victim. As for scale, they've demonstrated they can operate in all three major cities here on Vancouver Island. Now, I discovered these weaknesses because my crime reports included, as I said, full details, descriptions of the perpetrators, their addresses, and reliable witnesses. But I saw no effective action against them by the authorities. This led me to research your laws and justice system to discover these weaknesses. Even filing a well-founded court action did not succeed because of this same weakness. This literally denies victims access to justice, one of the rights guaranteed in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So while I am continuing to try to get justice, it's also essential to ensure you know about this weakness and what it means for your safety and security. Here's where the breakage is in your law enforcement and justice system. Just as the police do, all private security and private investigative agencies have qualified privilege, which is the permission to commit crimes justifiable in a court of law under the circumstances. We all insist that this government-assigned power is so great, the police must have stringent supervision and accountability for the use of qualified privilege to protect our rights. But here in BC, Canada hands over full police powers to your private investigative industry, with no such supervision or accountability. The investigators even have complete control over what is known about the victim or their situation. The police and public only know what they're told by the investigators. This allows corrupt actors in the private investigative industry to constantly put out disinformation against the victim to the police and the public around the victim, while the victim must detect and document the crimes being committed against them to have any information to send out. Also, the justice process, the police, the courts, and oversight agencies all rely completely on being able to identify the perpetrator. Private investigators operate anonymously against their subject. it is also impossible for any victims of crimes committed by investigators to identify them so that the proper agencies can act. This is why a Canadian lawyer I contacted said, private investigators can do anything. There is no police or court oversight. They don't even have to report to the police that they're operating in their jurisdiction. They have complete control of all information regarding the victim, and the victim has no legal recourse unless they can somehow identify these anonymous actors, specifically by name or at least by agency. Add these factors up, and your private investigative industry has all the powers of an actual secret police force, with no protections against corruption, and no guarantee their subjects' rights are being protected. But unlike a government secret police, they can be hired by anyone and targeted at anyone. This is an incredibly dangerous situation. No free country should allow an entire industry to act like a secret police force operating without any court or law enforcement supervision. Every criminal organization and every foreign intelligence service literally wishes for this kind of cover for their operations. And in Canada, they only have to help their assets fulfill some personal conditions and pass a test. This is not a problem for either modern criminal organizations or today's foreign intelligence agencies. But to close up these weaknesses, you have a great tool in your Charter of Rights and Freedoms. The Charter guarantees both the security of the person and access to justice. Right now, neither of these rights are accessible to anyone under private investigation. And that's a fully qualified legal basis for taking action. Now, here are some suggestions as to the changes you can make to ensure your citizens' rights are protected. First, there can never be any use of qualified privilege without the documentation and independent oversight to prove the use was actually qualified under the law. All government police agencies have regulations and policies for this. And further, all uses of qualified privilege by the private law enforcement industry necessarily happen in the jurisdiction of a police force. And, as mentioned, every use of qualified privilege is actually a crime that needs to be defensible in a court of law as being qualified, necessary for the circumstances. There are many ways to ensure citizens' rights are protected in this situation. One is very simple. All private investigations become supervised by the police of that jurisdiction to the same degree as the police themselves employ. This approach seems well supported by your laws. This fulfills the Charter's requirement for security of the person, and the documentation produced also supports the right to access to justice. Second, when any information gathered by private investigation is used against the subject must be able to provide their own side of events before any action is taken. Private investigators do not have the rights and privileges of the RCMP or other government authorities, and neither does the information they gather. Further, the application of justice must be fully informed, and the only other source of information is the subject of the investigation. It is far too easy for information to be edited, excerpted, or just wrongly portrayed, leading to the wrongful appearance of guilt or of innocence. Third, the official institutions of the police must be better supported in investigating modern crimes, from hacking to actual attempted murder. I documented what these criminals have been doing with their exploitation of this weakness. In addition to hacking my computers and accessing all of my saved intellectual property and online account credentials, I'm attesting that these criminals committed many more crimes against me, the worst of which was when they grew too hostile, angry, and tired of investigating someone who was committing no crimes, steadily reporting theirs and cursing them out for the crimes they were committing in their hearing as they surveilled me. They took the radical step of putting a jury-rigged microwave oven on the floor of their apartment over my head and turning it on. They blasted me with hundreds of watts of microwave radiation over and over again. Even though this crime is easily investigatable, the police did not seem to have the ability to investigate it or to provide me with any sort of protection, even a detector to log any future occurrences. This highlights the very important point: the police need to be supported against modern crimes. Microwave and other directed energy weapons they're becoming commonplace, and people trying to harm others with jury-rigged microwave ovens is a well-known crime now. A number of cases in Canada and the U.S. have been investigated, the criminals charged, put in jail, and their victims given treatment. Now, electromagnetic spectrum detectors, radio, microwave, etc., are commonplace and inexpensive technology, just as are the components to make improvised microwave weapons. The police should absolutely have the ability to sign out detectors to anyone who suspects they're being attacked this way. The only special feature that is needed is the ability to log the readings as evidence for the police, and that also is present on some detectors. I'd like to point out that having the ability to detect and log these attacks as evidence effectively takes away the main attraction someone would try to use a microwave weapon over another. The attraction is that the weapon is apparently undetectable, and this would allow the assailant to get away with this crime. But electromagnetic weapons are not undetectable. They're incredibly easy to detect with an inexpensive piece of equipment. Making that equipment readily available would be a huge deterrent against this kind of crime, and that is incredibly important for everyone's safety. So that's my analysis of the weakness in Canada's systems which are allowing these criminal organizations, and as stated, quite possibly at least one foreign intelligence organization, to use your private investigative industry as a cover for their operations. The solutions I'm suggesting seem well supported by our Constitution and Charter. I believe this is a case where your legislative bodies simply have not had occasion to focus, and per joint reports by Canada's police forces and other nations' police forces, crime has changed massively. No longer do criminal organizations try to operate in secrecy. Instead, they find a cover, a public cover, one which gives them the power both to carry out their operations and to attack their victims, who in our justice systems are the only ones with legal standing to file charges against them. Their new model is destroy the victim, and there won't be any charges. This is a serious threat to the safety and security of Canadian citizens. I've seen news reports here in Canada and in the U.S. of others seemingly suffering the same kind of attacks. So I believe there are a number of test cases out there that can be taken up for formal investigation. I'll be happy to cooperate to the fullest extent regarding mine. In conclusion, to my Canadian cousins in the land of my ancestors, times have changed. Canada must be prepared to ensure its safety in these times.